Hello and welcome to the MDC Talks. We are the Motion Dance Collective, a Screendance production company specializing in the creation, presentation and education of dance on film practice. Anna Clifford is here, James Williams is here, and it's your boy Omari Motion Carter here hosting today. Now, we have a special guest, as always with us. Jevan Chowdhury is here in the house. Jevan is an award-winning producer and director with 19 years experience in managing and producing broadcast and branded content. He's also a founder of the globally recognized Moving Cities project and founder and creative director of creative agency Wind and Foster. Yes, we're here on the MDC Talks. Welcome, Jevan. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, we've met, like we were saying, we've met on a couple of times and collaborated on a project. But what's interesting is that they've been short talks, and that's why I love the podcast so much. Is that we actually get a chance to actually have a long conversation with the people we love the work of and share a common goal in practice, I feel, So yeah, thank you for joining us. And the first question we usually ask everyone, so we have to ask you, sir, is what does the term screen dance mean to you? Right? Because it's not a term maybe that everyone uses, and we wonder whether you use it in your own practice, or do you call any work that you do with dance something different?
I don't tend to use the word screen dance ever. I know that it's used a lot in film festivals where you see dance films. It's used by you guys, by pretty much every other filmmaker in dance. They tend to use it. I guess choreographers don't really use it, and it makes sense to use it. I had an experience about Geeta Wigro, is that her name?
Yes, Geeta Wigro.
Geeta Wigro, yeah.
She put together a festival about 10 years ago, which I went to as my first experience of watching screen dance, and I can't remember where it was. It was in central London somewhere.
I think it might have been at the place, actually.
It was a huge cinema. It felt big.
Oh,
okay.
An auditorium, maybe it was the place, could have been. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The reason I mention that is that it was my first experience of seeing what you described as screen dance, and I really did enjoy it. I saw one thing at that screening that I enjoyed, and I felt the rest was extremely I just felt as an audience member that someone had just taken dance and plonked it onto the screen without really thinking about all the things you can do, really. So I've always had a bit of a negative reaction to the word screen dance ever since then. Because it's also a bit of a cumbersome in itself. It's not a very beautiful word. Screen, like dance sounds good, screen sounds good, but the two together just to me, yeah. So I've never had a good reaction to the word. It's an important word. It's a bit like music, It's how musicians they like to be eclectic and not be boxed in somewhere. Screen dance is a really boxing in word. It really boxes you in. I know Omari, you dance as well as you make films, but to be a screen dance artist, it boxes you in straight away. So when you say the word screen dance, the first thing I think is I have a negative reaction to it. But I do understand you need a word. You need people need to. It's a catalogue. It's a category. So. Yeah, hope that answers the question.
How would you classify the work you make with dance and film? Do you call it dance film? Do you call it, or do you not really label it so much?
That's a good question. I suppose I just call them films because they all have they are all ultimately, they all end up as a film, don't they? And then I'd rather justify it to someone who makes narrative filmmaking and say, oh, it's wordless and it features dancers, than have to face a filmmaker who doesn't want to talk to you because they think that that you've made something that's not even in their realm. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'd rather just call it a film because it is a film. I wouldn't. Yeah. If it's a comedy, I'd call it a comedy. If it's a feature, I'd call it feature because that denotes the length of it. But to call it a screen dance piece, I've always felt, I wouldn't ever describe it as screen dance, because specifically because I feel like it's what's the name of the it to me it's the equivalent of a registration piece. So registration is when someone films what's on the stage as a recording, archive recording. So, and I don't want to feel like that whatever I'm trying to make is going to be in that area. It's almost the I'd always try and do the opposite of a registration. So screen dance to me is the
It's a huge term. Yeah, it means it's so encompassing of everything, and I've always described it when I teach my students is that it's an umbrella term.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
It is
for so many different types of things, and you can decide how you tap into those things because so it's quite an interesting one because we've made a lot of what we would consider to be dance film.
Yeah, which is better.
Yeah, is that right? But then we also we did a registry alongside that, James, recently, didn't we? Like we threw one in for in kind on top of the fee, but it's like and that's why I use screen dance in general, just to go, well, we do all of these things, but right now we're making a dance film. Right now we're actually working with what was called more video dance practices of Katrina McPherson, because she has a very different technique when it comes to working with dance on film. But it's about knowing what comes underneath that umbrella, and both sides of those, and dance is included in that and film is included in that as separate entities, I feel. But a lot of people don't understand. They use it as a blanket term, or maybe as a thing to fit into this ideological, maybe slightly elitist.
Yeah, I've got a kind of like, so I didn't go to film school, and I studied architecture and then I studied design. So I've got a very narrow understanding of filmmaking generally from a design point of view. But I feel like if you start from a dancer's perspective and make film from that point of view, it can be even narrower. Like you really do need to understand the tools of what film, movie story making, visual story making can do before you throw dance into it. I feel to start with the dance piece and then kind of just map a screen onto it, or to think you're doing that, is the wrong way to think about it. That's I think my main problem with the term screen dance, is that it is fundamentally, to me, to me personally anyway, it's the wrong way to think about it. I don't know anything about. I'm aware of Katrina's work, and I'm definitely aware of Simon's work, but it's
so interesting.
That's what I would always say that. But I'm aware that I'm alone in that category.
I don't think you are.
I don't
though.
think you are. Mm-mm. No, it's just
even the screen. There's a video essay by an artist called Mitchell Rose, and it's called A Case Against Screen Dance, or A Case Against Dance Film. I can't remember what the official title is. I'll get it up. But it's it's absolutely fantastic, and he is a very prominent screen dance maker. But he says, we don't even know what to call ourselves, guys.
Yeah.
So if we can't do that, so he points out all of the fluxes in the culture. But that's what we need. We need people to challenge these things and to talk and to go, well, what is it? How can you define it and break it down? And okay, if that's your theory, I can agree with that. And then if that's your theory, I can agree with that. But that's what it's all about, really. Yeah,
it's a tricky one because it has grown, hasn't it? And that's why it needs a category name.
Yeah, it's nice to hear someone coming at it from a filmmaker's perspective as well, because even since episode 1, I think, of this podcast, I've kind of been saying that we don't have enough filmmakers in this genre. Yeah. It's all coming from the dance side. It's all coming from choreographers and dancers, and there's very little input from film. So how is there ever going to be a genuine balance or something of value in the film space coming out of a dancer heavy genre? There needs to be a balance, so it's really nice to hear that perpetuated.
It's like calling it screen comedy and screen horror and screen, like I don't think you should, the word screen is quite, not an insult, but it's quite a shove towards the concept of visual filmmaking. The screen shouldn't be there. You shouldn't be watching a screen when you're watching a film. Anyway, so I don't want. Yeah, it's my thing. It's my beef.
Yeah,
No,
that's great.
we love it.
I won't
we're-
go on about it anymore.
You know, I can see it. I hear it. Yeah, definitely. So with that in mind, then, what drew you first into getting into film?
Working with film and working with dance, because you said
So-
you had a background in architecture, right? That's what you studied at school.
I mean, like most cinematographers and most directors, people love making music videos. It's easy, often no scripts. You get to work with a composer. Everyone loves working with music. So most people, I would say, love working with music videos. But music videos is a notoriously difficult thing to do. To do successfully, and to then also get a successful audience for many reasons. And that's one of the first things that kind of allowed me to work more with dance, because dance is like such a buried such an untapped area, such a buried treasure in terms of filmmaking, because there's all these amazing, excellent dancers out there, and they kind of spend most of their time on the stage. Filmmakers don't really interact with them as much as they should do. Photographers do, which is a perfectly logical relationship, but filmmakers don't. And the reason they don't, mostly, I believe, is because dance is just supremely abstract and no one gets it. Most dancers say that dance is made for dancers, or quite a wealthy section of society can pay weekly to go and watch these things. But and that's the majority. Obviously, there's always exceptions, but I don't enjoy watching dance. I find it very frustrating to watch. Most contemporary dance shows I've seen, I haven't enjoyed. But the ones I have enjoyed, I've really enjoyed. Like, I've been overwhelmingly, emotionally engaged with.
Yeah.
And the dancers who I've worked with, I've always been far moved by them than any actor I've worked with. So I've got this kind of, up and down relationship with it. And the reason simply that I got drawn into it was because I wanted to do something that didn't, because I didn't go to film school and I didn't have the ability to transfer script on screen, which is a very expensive thing to do. I'd rather work on a baseline aesthetic, which doesn't have a script, which doesn't have a need for a sound recordist. And working with dancers is like a really luxurious experience. They communicate, that you can work with one or two or three. It says so much. The talent is just, if you try and film an actor, make a show reel with an actor, you're not going to get very far. But if you do it with a dancer, oh my God, just put a ballerina in front of a camera. It's so the attraction to dance as anyone doing anything visual is quite logical, but there was a couple of things that happened all at one time, which pushed me towards it, which was just I was lucky enough to work with East London Dance on a commission for Westfields, the shopping centre, just before the Olympics, and they very basically wanted to do a celebration of dance in one video, lots of dancers all dancing in East London at one time, and I worked on that, and I kind of steered it in the way I wanted to steer it, because it was a very low budget project. Which happens on low budget projects, you get a bit more leverage sometimes, and from then it inspired me to go, well, if I can do it in East London, why can't I do it in West London? Why can't I do it in another city? And so that's kind of where the ball started rolling.
Yeah. Amazing. Because you, when you started Wind and Foster, you said that you obviously didn't study film. So when you started the company, what was the motivation for starting a film production company?
So my first job was as a designer and kind of animator. And so when I came out, I worked in an agency. I left after a couple of years, and everyone around me who was starting a company at that time was calling it Ricky Productions, Ben Jones Productions or Fantastic Productions, and that didn't make that for me didn't make sense. So I called it Wind and Foster because I wanted to find a metaphoric way of describing something I believed in, like a process. So Wind and Foster is the art of kind of making something out of nothing. So wind represents the idea, something you can't see, but it's potentially quite powerful. And foster represents the process of, you know, cultivation, harnessing, and to me that was quite a powerful concept. But also at the same time, it also disguised me. Like, you know, it didn't have me on it. It was, you know, two potentially wealthy backers. You know, so it had this kind of grand sounding credit at the same time as being something that I felt quite passionate about, which was the concept. So yeah, because it's quite, if you work in any creative sector, for me it's quite, 80% of people you come across have got quite superficial ideas, and so the 20% who are really amazing, I'm always quite passionate about. I'm always kind of like, wow, you guys are amazing, really talented, but they're often the ones that don't push themselves. So the idea of fostering is something that I was really quite felt strongly about.
Amazing. It's so interesting to hear the purpose behind the name as well, because that was something else I was thinking. I wonder why, you know, because it is a unique name and it clearly signifies something to you. So it's so interesting to hear sort of where it came from.
Yeah, not enough people do. Not enough people do the fostering bit, like you said. There's a lot of wind out there. No, serious.
Well, but a name is so important. Like a name is really. If I'd called it Chowdhury Movies, I probably wouldn't have got as many commercial jobs as I have done. You know, simple facts of life. You know, so it's one of those ones. You know, you have to think about a brand's name when you start a company up. So, you know.
Yeah, that's why I called mine the Motion Dance Collective as well, because I didn't want it to
Be the Amari
show. Yeah, but then I also didn't want it to. I wanted to say at the time, I wanted to signify I had more people involved than I actually did. Right? People were like, "Who's in the collective?" I bet, look, we have a large network. Don't you worry. But then it actually grew. It became the thing I wanted it to be. You know, and so now I do have a large collective. But yeah, it was it's yeah, like you were saying, the name is so important, and it's quite interesting that when that happens, you take a back. Do you feel like you take a back seat in your own artistic
practice?
Yeah. Do you feel like that you are subservient to the company in that sense? Like
No, like the name is just there. It's a kind of a small key to a door, and it's, you know, I mean, I work really hard. I work like 14-hour days, and I mean, I've got 3 kids, and I still work all weekends. I mean, I do most. My wife tells me I work much more than I do, but I think that no, there's no taking a back seat. I wish there was, but I just feel so. I feel like my name or the name Wyndham Foster or just the personal relationship I have with the person who's commissioning me, I feel like I always want to please them, whether they're paying me or not, and so I don't feel like there's a back seat to ever sit on. Yeah, I'm always sticking my head out the sunroof. You know, I don't. Yeah, it's. But going back to the name thing, it's really important. I remember the first set of CVs I ever looked through years ago, where I might have put a advert out for some kind of production assistant or something, but I remember my reaction to names, like foreign names and versus Christian names. I remember I couldn't believe how I was discriminating, and I didn't even think I was discriminating. Why would I discriminate? But I did, and I couldn't believe it, and I just had to really work backwards and understand why. And then I met people I went to school with who changed their names and had noticed the difference in there. You know, it's really interesting. It's a massive kind of thing that none of us really pay attention to, or maybe we do, but you know.
Yeah, absolutely. You, I guess we kind of touched on it just now, but we know obviously that your company has many different facets, and you do a lot of brand content and advertising work. And then obviously you have Moving Cities, which is a huge umbrella underneath that as well. So I guess our big question for you, because, you know, we're sort of at the beginning of our business journey, if you will, is as a entrepreneur and as a business owner and having this sort of bigger scale company that you are sustaining, how do you create space for your own personal artistic practice?
So I was making branded content for about 15 years before I started moving cities. And on that journey, you're just trying to make ends meet. You're trying to work with good people. You're trying to learn. 15 years is not a long time in production. Most people say to get to a point where you're kind of happy is 10 years. So I think, and everyone's journey is different. I mean, some people are really lucky, but I would say the majority of people need to take some time. And then I got I think I did some business coaching with a mentor at a time when I had some major kind of health concerns. So, I think everyone hits that point where you think you're dying or something's going on. And they basically said, what would you do right now? What would you do if you had 5 years? What would you do? I said, well, I kind of got this concept called moving cities, but it's just like, it's really difficult to do. It's really difficult. Like to do it would take so much kind of work. And they were like, well, what is it? So I explained the concept to them. There's a lady called June Gamble. Really, really great coach. And we had like a handful of sessions over Skype. And I basically explained the concept, explained the inspirations. And she was like, why don't you just do one? Just do one.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So I did one. And I learned a lot. And James will probably testify to this. Like, you go out with a camera and you do a shoot. And I'm like, you learn so much just in that experience. So I did that with Martha Leah Wilkinson, who was a dancer I already knew quite well. I probably knew at that point 10 dancers through the Westfield experience.
Yeah.
And so we did this. What happens when you go out and you shoot where there's no client is you just play around, and if your eye sees something, you just go for it. And that's what happened. And I started to look at trains differently, and I started to use long lenses where I'd never used them before, and then I came back, edited it together, it's something, and then I shared it as you do with some friends on social media, and then I thought, oh, maybe I'll do it with more than one dancer, and so I did it with 10 dancers. And the dance community is such that if you know one or two, yeah, exactly, Anna. If you know a few, you know a few, and then I did it with 10 dancers, and it worked really well. And then you kind of this time you're kind of finding your feet in terms of working with music and composers and trying to establish a signature. And then it was a fairly straightforward process from that point. Well, it was difficult, but then to go to Paris, it was like, well, a few of the dancers I worked with, they were like, oh, you should do it in Paris. It'd be really exciting, And so bought tickets to go to Paris. Every person I'd contacted was like, yeah, maybe I could meet you, maybe,
Gosh.
yeah. There's a lot of, and it just all fell together. Dancers in their lunch hours and after work, or, yeah, people just met at funny times, and they're all really amazing, really, really amazing dancers. All of them had seen the London one, and they liked the idea of it. And then it just, in the space of a year, we did London, Paris, Brussels, Yerevan in Armenia. And I think we did, is it Athens? Or is it Athens might be at the end of
that
the
was
12 months?
15. Yeah, I was looking at how many you did in such a short period of
2015,
time.
wasn't it?
Yeah, because you did like 4 in 2014 and 4 in 2015
Yeah, it was a
I
lot.
think
It
on
was
your
a lot in
website
one go,
anyway, it
yeah.
looks
And at
that
the
way.
time, trying to figure out how to set up a Facebook page and all the insecurity that comes with that, and trying to maintain all these relationships, get crediting right. It's a really difficult thing to do. But it was the reason you do it, the reason I did it, was because at the end of the 15 years of creating branded content, people only knew you for that. They didn't know you for anything else. And if you feel like you can do something else, and if you feel like you've got a mandate in any shape, way or form, then you've got to do it. And because the coach I was working with was like, well, if you are going to die, what would you do? And it is as simple as that. It was like, well, if not when, if not now, when, kind of question. So that's what spawned the motivation to do it, and the motivation is the key thing, actually.
Yeah.
Because without that, you can't do it.
Totally.
Right. Yeah, but in every single city I went to, literally even Prague, I remember Prague very clearly. Even Prague, I got there and I didn't want to be there. Second day, didn't want to be there. Third day, I want to go home. I don't want to do it because why are you doing it? Like, yeah, it's going to be exciting when you're doing it, but it's a difficult thing to carry the whole time. There's no money behind it.
Especially on your own, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Why are you doing it? It's a bit like making music, but making music is like you're in a studio. It's hot. It's warm. You can, you can eat.
Yeah.
But when you're in another country and it's cold and you don't know anyone and people are like always skeptical, and especially really really top level dancers, you have to battle with that every single day. But I think that the tables have turned a little bit now, and now it's nice to be commissioned a bit more often, which is nice.
I was going to say, it's interesting hearing you talk about it, the shooting side of it being quite experimental for you, which is quite a shock to me actually. Having watched, they seem to follow a really nice visual trend, and it looks like you had a style in mind when you shot it. I mean, there's a lot of decisions that carry over from episode to episode. So was it a case that the first one was very experimental and you were kind of just playing with things and making it up, and then after that you sort of went, I really liked how that turned out, maybe we need to set some guides for how we continue this series? Or was each one still had these elements of play inside it?
I would say every schedule is kind of like, so just say Prague, for example, you'd have 15 locations and I would have seen each location, roughly mapped out a shot, but I wouldn't have met the dancer or the group. They would rock up and I'd always have 45 minutes with each act in each location. So if you can imagine, James, it is a really small crew. You have to figure out what you're doing, what the choreography is, how you're going to control the environment, and what the camera's doing in that time. And it's really difficult. So what I mean by playful is that without being playful, I couldn't have done it. I had to basically work with the dancer and explain that. Imagine it's a documentary. Imagine I'm not here. I want you to just go full pelt. I want you to just let loose. I want you to unleash when I say action for 2 minutes constantly. And we'd do that probably 5 or 6 times. And by the 6th time, I would know exactly how to shoot it. So that's kind of, and what I mean by playful and how to shoot it is that, to me, half the picture is the background and the foreground. The dance is important, but I want to know what's going to happen between the foreground and the background so I can get my transitions and my wipes and all the kind of stuff that is important to me when filming in a city is the movement of what's around the dancer. For example, is a train going to go past? Is a bus going to help me transition to the end? Is if it's not busy, where can I tilt or pan from to find the dancer in the shot? We haven't got time for them to enter, for them to move and choreograph into the shot, into the frame. So it's got to be, it's a real, is it a documentary approach? It kind of is. The camera's always long lens on a tripod, but I remember working, on a lot of shoots now, there's always a DP there, and it's a very frustrating process for me to work with a DP actually, because I'm kind of very particular, yet also very playful about it at the same time. But the problem with DPs is that, from my point of view, is they have to have a very fixed idea of what is going to happen. There needs to be a massive conversation with them, whereas there can't be. For me, it's so like, it just has to happen at the moment. You have to respond to what's going to happen rather than, I would say to the DP, you are moving that camera in the way the choreographer is telling them what to do. So you are literally choreographing with your camera. And that's difficult. A lot of DPs were like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? In Barcelona, a film that hasn't been released yet, I worked with a brilliant, an amazing cinematographer. Alberto Balalasas. I can't pronounce his name. Balasas. But like he was kind of like, I literally can't say anything here. What can I do for you? I don't know. I can like set it all up for you. And I was like, yeah, you just got to anticipate what's going to happen. You need to look at the dance, figure it out, and just work with it. But it's like, he's got like 20 years experience as a cinematographer, but he just never worked with dance before, you know? So I kind of underplay the importance of watching dance and watching movement, but that is the key. Otherwise, you don't know what to do with the camera.
Yeah, it's definitely part of the prep work, isn't it? If you're going to work with.
Yeah, it's also knowing how it's going to edit as well. It's also knowing what you can give the editor that will make it work as a smooth transition, because there's a lot of accidental stuff that happens that's very intentional. Where the camera looks like it's falling is kind of intentional. But like, you know, there's a lot of great feature films at the moment that there's a lot of like, you know, you can watch Netflix to see how actually a lot of the what looks like a malfunctioning camera is actually intentional. It's actually quite en vogue to do that kind of thing, and that's great, you know, because I think that really breaks the, you know, mold. But I keep coming back to the fact that you've got to know the film language first, which I don't even know. I know a little bit of it, but most dance choreographers don't know it. But I think you need to know that in order to break it.
That's what you say. You need to know the rules to break them.
That's why I have nothing to say now.
I know.
I'm just nodding my head.
Literally, we're just so quiet.
Well,
Rob,
that's the
because
MDC Talks, guys. Tune in. Truth has just been told.
what you just
Let's do it
said
again.
is the core of so many conversations we've had on this podcast, because obviously James is a cinematographer. He's also a DOP. He's the Motion Dance Collective's DOP. And what's so special about him and his work is that because of his background in dance and his understanding of movement and visual storytelling from being inside it, you know, we can plan a shoot and break down the shots and every single thing we want, but he also has the capability to just improvise on the day. So that, I think, is such a special quality, as you say, because you have to anticipate things.
Is. Yeah, I mean, most producers I know, you know, I'm always recommending them kind of, you know, if they like, oh, we're looking for a photographer or, you know, a filmmaker, and I'd recommend some, they'll always say, do they have dance? And I'm experienced. I'm like, no. I'm like, no, but they're amazing. Don't worry. But I kind of learnt it a lot from dance producers, because they're like, you need dance experience. You need to have seen dance to be able to work with it in that way. But, you know, some people are natural to it. So I've met a lot of dancers who turned into cinematographers, but I don't think it's a formula. You know, but it like Amari's a good example. But yeah, there's a lot of them, and it's becoming a trend. It has to become a trend.
Yeah, I know a lot of dancers who are now in film.
You don't see it much the other way around, though, do you? I've been trying to. I really want to like start doing group warm ups before we start shooting and stuff, and we make
That's
a dance
a good
film,
idea.
just to get everyone like, come on, guys, like we'll do a bit of this, and we can get into each other's language a little bit more, because it's a sharing, isn't it? Really.
That's a really good idea.
All right, next one, James, you're up for it. You ready?
It's interesting to hear the conversation of the director, DP, choreographer relationship, because that's something we haven't really had the opportunity to talk about on this yet, because a lot of the people who we've spoken to are either choreographers or primarily from the dance world. So it's interesting hearing it coming from someone who is on the film side, talking about the relationship between, you know, the camera, how the director wants to negotiate the entire construction of the world, and then also how does the conversation with a choreographer fit into that language, because often there's this sort of mismatch in the language of the director and the choreographer. Have you had any experience with that?
So what's the question?
Just what's your experience with the discussions around how to present dance for film. In terms of your relationship with managing the voice of a choreographer, the voice of a cinematographer, the voice of a director.
It's a really complicated thing with if you depending on when you're working with ballet or contemporary dance, because choreographer and choreography is always different, especially in the way it's delivered. A lot of, for example, in ballet, you try and you want to be able to talk to the dancer directly and give them tips, but if you don't know ballet, you really it can really be difficult for them and for you. In contemporary dance, they love the freedom. They love the idea of being given a story or a character and they can run with it. So sometimes you really, really do need a choreographer to find a way diplomatically and specifically to explain your idea. In Dallas, I had this idea of a pulsating group of people and in a zebra crossing in a very busy junction. It was very unsafe. We only had a short amount of time to do it. So I said to the choreographer, this is what I have in mind, and I'd kind of spend 5 minutes having a brain dump with her for her to spend 10 seconds talking to the group and say, right, he wants an amoeba. he basically wants an amoeba, right? And sometimes it's as clear as that. Sometimes it's the process that you need to go through as the person with the vision, because you're figuring out what you want, and you need that soundboarding person. And if it's a choreographer, perfect, because they have a relationship with the dancers and they could. But for you to stand in front of a group of dancers and go, well, what I'm thinking of is, something like this that might do this. There's 10 of them. There's 10 of them. They're all going to get different ideas, and they're not going to know where to hold hands and to cross feet. So you really do need a choreographer, really, because it's a real science. It's a real bit of expertise, and you can create a bad experience without having that person there. Similarly with a DP, you need someone who understands the science of a camera, really. If it's a big camera and it's going to do a good job, then as a director, you don't want a camera operator, you want a DP. So it's a choreographer is really, really important. I've found the stronger they are, the better. The more experienced they are, the better, because there's a lot of diplomacy on a film shoot that is required, and you need someone who's really secure in what they know, because you're gonna, if you're a strong director and you have an idea, you're often going to disagree with that choreographer, and you need a choreographer who can take that, and an experienced choreographer can totally take it. They can roll their eyes and they'll be able to take it and go, right, so you just want something as simple as that, cool, and I can do that. Because often you do want something simple. Like choreographers the people who do stuff for stage, they often want really complex compositions with very specific timings, very specific set instructions. There's so much going on. As a filmmaker, you just want something simple, really, because in the edit you're going to do your own choreography there. But from a choreographer for screen, you really do want something simple often, Yeah. So, in answer to your question, James, I would say I found personally it much easier working with really strong, experienced people who can take it and you can learn from as well, because I'm all constantly learning. I'm not a dancer, so. And
I guess you challenge each other that way too, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, in Hong Kong, I learned so much. I worked with Septime Webra, who's the Hong Kong artistic ballet director, and he taught me a lot about. I mean, I wouldn't claim to know much more about ballet, but he taught me a lot about the translation process that I'm going through with him and what he's trying to do. But it taught me also how to manage my expectations of the time it takes versus what I'm telling them versus what they can do. Because often you'll say, it's like, often with someone like Septime, I'll be saying to him, I want a shepherd's pie, when he can do like a Michelin five course meal. Like you really need to know the ballpark in which you're working. So, but yeah, it depends on the size and the scale of what you're doing, but Yeah, the one thing I would say is it's always complicated, it's always stressful, and I always feel like I'm going to die on the day of the shoot. You know, I don't look forward to shoots. I hate shoots. You know, and you know, because they're really pressure. You know, you go in there and you don't put, you know, you're always underestimated. You're putting a gamble on yourself every time you walk on set. So
That's what excites me, though. I like it when I wait for the first problem to happen, then I know the shoot has begun. I always say that. I said, "Here we go, the shoot has begun." They're late. Great, here we go. It's the PlayStation game of Amari's life.
Yeah.
Begins. But yeah, what you're saying about these conversations we're having with people, I think is so important because now there is a really big jump of a lot of people wanting to make moving image content, and without wanting to take the time to actually learn the process of what that is. So you spend a lot of time teaching, right, your clients what this relationship is going to be. I've been in a few situations where I've mentioned maybe you should have a director for this, and the choreographer's gone, what? I'm making a really stank face, guys. Just to let you know. The choreographer's like, Why would I need one of those?
Director? I'm the choreographer.
And so you always go through this sort of process, and now we're getting better at it as well, because that's a learning process in itself. How do I explain and justify all these things that you actually need in order to get this done that may have not even come into your head? And so, yeah, the benefit of working with experience is wonderful, but then being able to maybe foster experience in other people, right? Like let's talk and work on this together. And this is what our roles are going to be, because every role has 13 things that they do, right? If I'm a producer, what do you want me to do? The distribution, the spending of the money, you know. So I think it's so important for crews and people just to get together and put more time into their pre-production, right? Just put a couple days. If you don't know about film, let's sit down for 2 days and let's talk about the process, and then we can get to the shoot being excited about whether we can pull it off, rather than still having
freaking
gaps,
out.
right? But it's so difficult because we don't get that much pre-production time
time
in comparison to theatre. If we got that sort of theatrical 6-week,
rehearsal period,
then we'd be all right. Then we'll get to a space where where we can be comfortable, a little bit more comfortable when it comes to it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm talking out loud. But
no, it's so true.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Yeah. Do you guys work with script a lot?
We have a little bit.
Yeah, we did. Well, we recently did one. I'm thinking of Windows, James, with Akeem.
Yeah.
And we did work with a little bit with a script there, and then with Marlene Miller in Canada, we did. I think that was an audio visual kind of script, so it didn't have any words in it, but there was definitely play by play of like what was going to happen, and then we do a story breakdown for that. But yeah, not that often.
Windows had a ton of dialogue in it, like a ton.
What's that?
Windows.
Yeah, Windows had a lot, didn't it?
Yeah, it was like, I would say, more dialogue than movement, actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
No, not so much. Yourself?
What's that, working with scripts?
Yeah.
Yeah, quite often, whether it's a voiceover or whether it's characters, but I haven't done lots and lots with character scripts. So, I mean, I've done a bit, but I haven't done as much dance. I've done more dance than I have that kind of work with actors, but it's much more, I think when you have a script and a story and then you can like storyboard it out, it's a lot easier and it's a lot more enjoyable. I think working with dance in the way I do it is very honestly, and I'll put it as bluntly as I can, it is completely 100% about learning from a Scratchworks point of view, because it's a real luxury. It's not a luxury, but it's a real. It's always a real learning curve, because you learn so much about what you're seeing, about what you're doing, and you don't have the weight of a audio, a script on you. You don't have the weight of that story. All you are doing is you are learning about movement on screen, and what is, it's just, to me, as a very visual person, it's real educational experience watching a dance on screen in an edit and seeing what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's really interesting.
And it always looks different in post as well, doesn't it? You sort of
Yeah,
see
yeah,
things that maybe
always,
you
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
see on the day.
Totally. Yeah, on the day, you know, you're experiencing, like I said, you know, the exterior environment of a street, which is noisy and cold. And then in an edit suite, when you isolate the sound, it becomes really beautiful and actually becomes worth it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, it's the stuff I've done and the places I've filmed with, you might have seen them in some of the films, it's been really stressful. We've had like, in the early days, we didn't have much support, but now we have like, you know, police and stewards, and we have people to help kind of protect us. But yeah, it's always stressful. You know.
But
Always
see,
risky.
it makes the awards worth it, sir. Come on now. And the screenings and things like that. Did you expect it to have like, obviously it's got such an international reach in general when it comes to the films themselves, but did you expect it to have that sort of international reach when it came to the festival circuit?
I didn't expect it, because the scene has been like, take something like Film Freeway, for example, the access to these kinds of festivals. I wouldn't say like they've been around for that long, but I mean, it's lovely to be recognised. I really get a kick out of it, being in a magazine or being reviewed or getting an award. Yeah, I mean, cash prizes are great. But I'm not, I won't lie to you, I wasn't expecting it. I was just, you know, someone told me this thing a while ago, and I really, you know, it really kind of hit home with me. They said like, you know, making work and sharing it with, you know, few hundred friends, family, whatever, on your social network is the equivalent of masturbation. They said, you really don't, that's nothing, you know, it really needs to go well beyond what
That's
you
so
know in
Right.
order for it to be, you know, anything, like considered anything. And yeah, it's really important to me to get, you know, some kind of recognition, definitely, because I put a lot of work into it. So I want to know if it's crap, you know. I want, you know, and your friends aren't going to tell you that.
Right, it's so true. You want an honest, unbiased opinion, which is hard to get from the people
I mean, it's
you
still
know.
it's still hard to get at film festivals, right?
True.
Your film finishes, and then how was it? And oh no, yeah, it was great. Was it which one? The one with the yeah, yeah.
No,
you
but
know.
I have been to a film festival, and I think it was, I remember going to the Leeds one, and they showed the film, and it was the first time I'd seen the Yerevan one in a cinema.
Right.
And it was really, I really enjoyed watching it in cinema. But I remember that it didn't get any prizes, didn't get any recognition, didn't get anything. And I remember being annoyed at that. I remember being like, these fucks. Like, yeah, so, you know.
And yeah, sometimes you think about like how they've placed it amongst other work as well, because you see that they kind of they've obviously structured it in a certain way and put things
screening,
in a
yeah.
certain thing, and you put it against other things. But no, it's interesting. Yeah, because the film festival circuit, if anything, costs you more money than it
Than it
makes
gives you
you.
back.
Yeah, totally. But there's some amazing work out there, man. Incredible work, like, you know, really, really amazing. It's the genre is growing, you know, it really is.
So with that in mind, what made you release the work? Because you know some people might go on the film festival circuit and then they may keep it off of online or put it on demand or charge a fee to watch it. Have you ever made work that has stayed like,
Private.
for distribution purposes only,
For
making
stuff
money?
that's unfinished? No. Well, you mean in the sense that yeah, I see what you're saying. I've got a bit of stick from film festivals about that, because they're like, oh, you put it, you know, we won't take it because it's already online.
Right.
I suppose I'm kind of a bit of a staunch believer in accessibility, which isn't cool for film festivals, because they always want an exclusive, I suppose. But it means more to me that the dancers and their parents and their friends can watch it, actually, than like a film festival audience. Maybe that's not the right attitude to have, but it does mean a lot to me to make things completely accessible. It's a really tricky one. It's probably not the wisest thing to say, but
No, I think there's two sides. Like, we absolutely agree. We release a lot of our work
Yeah.
online.
And we were speaking to, so Mitchell Rose in the US releases everything,
Online.
and he doesn't.
He's a firm believer in
everywhere.
just getting it out there,
On
letting
Facebook,
people see
on
it.
YouTube, on Vimeo, not caring about likes or anything. And then you have like people like Marlene Miller, for example, who is only film festival, only
Yeah.
looking at TV distribution. And we haven't gone into
Screenings.
that world yet of like TV distribution and other things like that. But it's
I
something
mean,
we're
there's-
interested in.
There's some things I'm really strict about and some things I'm not. Like, I've had a few people who've contacted me from other cities, other filmmakers, other choreographers who said, can we make the Tokyo version and then can it be part of your, branding and series? Yeah, no, I mean, that's happened quite a lot. And
How dare they?
No, of course, that's what's going to happen. You found a trend in it.
I don't really go for that. I've had quite a few people want to buy the footage to make it part of an advert, for like skin cream or for a chocolate bar or for a fizzy drink. Yeah, so that's happened, but I haven't sold it. So yeah, that I mean, there's been one case where someone wanted to make a music video and they wanted a couple of clips, and that's different, but because I like the music, I said yeah, that's fine. But it's yeah.
Yeah, because we saw you were selling you have some stills online to buy.
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
A
when
shop,
I saw that,
yeah.
genius.
Yeah.
This is brilliant. That's such a brilliant idea because a lot of people go screen us.
Not many people buy from it, but a few people have, but it's not. I don't like. There's some dance photographers out there who are good and they sell prints for a living. It's a different thing to what I'm doing a little bit, but yeah, dance photography is a whole
different
whole
ballgame,
nother
right?
place. Yeah.
So how many Moving Cities films have you made to date? Because I believe there's 10 on your website currently, but I know there's a few still in post that maybe you've already shot or that you've sort of advertised as coming soon. So how many have you actually made so far?
Hong Kong wasn't a film, and I don't know if it was a long installation. Barcelona was a film, and it's a really interesting film, but it's not been finished because of money, and that's it. So there aren't any others. There's a lot in the pipeline in terms of places to go and like.
Did I see Tel Aviv?
Yeah, Tel Aviv. We met Bathsheba, and again, just money. The proposal went through. They're happy. We're happy. It's just the sponsor, because we're past the point now where we'll do it without money, mostly because of safety.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd rather do it just properly,
Oh, yeah. Especially now that you've sort of established the series and what it is and what you want it to be. I can imagine it's hard to settle for anything less than that because you want to continue to live up to that
Yeah.
that idea that you've created and surpass it. And the only way to do that is to keep building,
Yeah. I mean, San Francisco, we went to San Francisco, everything was in place to do it, and then the person who was sponsoring it left their job, and it didn't happen. So, but then, that has happened in a few cities, actually. So, and with the pandemic, that can only get harder. So, but the installation I just did in Hong Kong, that might be the new version of a film in some respects, because that's quite an interesting project. Because if you think about it from a film point of view, a photograph is really valuable because it can be a photo or digitally and also printed. A film's kind of not as valuable to people as an installation or a photo. So it's a tricky one. Although I prefer making films, it's from a
a
commercial
different
point.
being, isn't it? It's a different.
Yeah, you need a plasma screen or a screen to show it to people. So yeah.
Cool. Could you share some of the sort of, you kind of touched on it before or hinted at it a little bit before, but could you share some of the sort of interesting or challenging experiences you've had while filming on location for the series?
Gosh, there's been so many. I mean, like, you're filming in the streets, right? In every city of the world where there's always protests, hobos, crowds, people who like you, people who don't like you. You know, it's really tricky, really difficult. Oh God, this. I mean, like name a
Too
city.
many to count.
I mean, like we filmed on a place called Erebuni in Armenia, in Yerevan, which is we filmed on the highest. Is it the highest? It's the highest point, and it's the highest wall of the highest point. And there's a scene with about 20 boys, 20 dancers on a line, on a wall, which was quite precarious. That was quite, you know, amazing. There was we filmed in the Olympic pool in Barcelona on the highest diving board. Two dancers. I don't know if you've seen the trailer. The two dancers gyrating.
Okay. Yeah.
With a view of Sagrada Familia in the background. That was amazing. But loads of, I mean, there's positive and negative experiences. I mean, been attacked by a naked man in San Francisco. Yeah, you know, in Prague we got arrested because we used, I mean, we had the whole crew got arrested in Prague and got blackmailed, bribed because we were using part of the infrastructure in the city that we shouldn't have. We were told we had permission by a cafe owner, and apparently it wasn't his. So we were all arrested, and then the British Council basically helped us get out of it. There's loads, like in every city. I think I honestly, you just have to pick a city, and I have to pick an example. But there's always stories. I mean, in Hong Kong, you know, the most recent one, the riots were there, right? And so we had a live shoot plan, 3-day live shoot with coach buses, you know, ferrying dancers from location to location. Huge, massive project. Within 2 weeks we had to cancel the entire outdoor shoot and move it into a green screen space and recreate the entire thing in a green screen space on the 8th floor of a building. It's really difficult to move that ship around. Required some substantial investment and money. And keying out green out of ballet tutus and materials not easy.
Oh my
so
goodness,
that was and the protests, you know, our client MTR was the enemy in terms of those protesters. It was, you know, it was a very difficult it was a very, very difficult project, you know, but you know, we could have easily just gone, oh yeah, you know, we'll just do the best we can. But this is the problem. Like, I'm not really a person who just does the best they can. I just have to literally bulldoze through every wall there is. And that's often difficult. You know, that's a really difficult thing because I don't like making enemies. I like making friends. So that's difficult to do. Hong Kong was a very stressful project.
This is interesting because this is the stuff we don't hear about. We just see this wonderful work,
polished
and we don't think
product.
about like all the things that goes into it. And I think if we need a behind the scenes, Jevan, the next one.
Yes.
No, because we need to see the process more because people will understand it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it looks all in the end. It's such a long process that takes time, energy, all of that sort of stuff. And yeah, like,
and especially because this series is so unique and so like, obviously it translates to every city. It can translate to every city, but all those cities are very unique. And as you say, it's different every time. And the spontaneity and the improvisation that happens on shoot day with those dancers, I feel like, I would crave a behind the scenes because I just feel like it's so interesting. So I'm so curious to see what that would be like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even mentioned Dallas. I think Dallas was a huge project as well. And we had the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders asked to be involved, which was a massive compliment. And when they got involved, you know, you really need to know what you're doing when like an outfit like the Dallas Cowboys get involved. And, you know, we had to close down a street, a main street, Elm Street. It's like a 5-lane street in Dallas. All that kind of stuff requires, you know, and you don't have the money to do that. So you're always working in a guerrilla fashion. Yeah, you can hire like 2 cop cars, $200 a piece for an hour. Yeah, you can hire security, but that only gets you so far. You still have to deal with you know, the hire car companies who have to close down for an hour. You still have to deal with, you know, all the other kind of randoms that happen on the day. And then you have to explain to them why 15 naked girls are pretty much, you know, running up
Dancing
and
in
down
the
the road. You have to, you can't say I'm making art, you know. You can't say that.
I was shooting a commercial once, and on the Scout we went to look at some landmarks for some locations for this commercial, and we had this amazing conversation with this I think he was a priest, something like that, and we were trying to explain to him that we were having these two contemporary dancers were going to come down to this landmark, which was kind of overlooking his church, chapel, whatever it was. And we were trying to explain to him, you know, are you okay with us coming and you know, being in front of your property and doing this shoot? And he was like, well, I don't think it's very appropriate, is it, to have dancers in front of a church? And I just remember the director saying, well, they're not strippers.
Yeah.
But it's just that
The concepts.
very difficult to explain, exactly what it is that's going to be filmed and how them spaces are being used.
I think the thing is that the main kind of barrier that you're constantly trying to visualize for a choreographer or a dancer when they step out of a theatre, when they step out the stage, is that you're trying to control the environment. To be honest, it's not so much for them to understand, it's just for everyone involved to understand that if you work in a city, which is where I normally work, I don't work in a park, I don't work in a desert, I don't work in a studio, I work in a city. And a city is a living, breathing machine that needs to move, it needs to work. And if you stop it, if you bottleneck it, if you create a dead end when there isn't one, you really need to know what you're doing, because you are stopping this huge thing from moving. And that's the thing. That controlling the environment thing is you just have to be totally aware that that is part of your choreography, that's part of your vision, that's part of your artistic direction. And if you're not aware of that, you'll get someone killed, you know?
Yeah, easily. So you won an award in the Dare to Dance in Public Film Festival back in 2018 for the best polished film. And it was on a Moving Cities project. So we were just curious, what in your opinion makes a polished film?
I suppose it does what it says on the tin, I suppose. It's just something that someone's really put their knuckles and blood, sweat and tears into and spent ages obsessing over it. I mean, I remember nights when I've been editing and then checking the door lock and water tap 3 or 4 times before I left, because the obsessive behaviour stays with you when you leave the office. And when I mean obsessive, I mean, what is that dancer's arm doing on that cut? What is the music doing on that cut? And why does it then allow the next cut to be naturally... I mean, the process I have now in terms of polishing isn't grading, it's moving things around randomly to see what happens. So say you have an edit, you really like it, just move it around randomly, literally let my 3-year-old play with it, see what happens. Because actually, if it's better than what you have to really ask yourself why. And with dance that could happen. You can't do that with spoken word, but with dance that can happen. If you shuffle stuff around, you know, you could, and this is what I always find frustrating about contemporary dance, is that, you know, if I, and Hofesch's work, I love it, but as an example, his latest stuff, if I shuffle it around, put the beginning and the end and the end and the beginning, honestly, will it make a difference to the audience experience? Probably not. Like I said, I think his work is incredible, but does it make a difference to the experience? And with a dance edit, you have to do that. You have to move things around randomly to see, you know, to see to check yourself, basically.
And it's so interesting because you mentioned spoken word, and obviously I know that the film that Omari participated in with you had spoken word in it. That was Moving Southwark, is that right?
Moving Southwark, yeah.
And
the Bird's Eye one.
And you were talking earlier about working with a script and the sort of role that can play in the process. But obviously everything that you do is visual storytelling, and you've used that word that descriptor a couple of times. But I guess my question was, do you think of the Moving Cities project as a narrative dance film, or do you think of it more, because I'm intrigued by the difference between a narrative dance film and if it's the same as visual storytelling or different? Because to me, a narrative dance film is something that takes me on an emotional journey, and obviously in the same breath, Moving Cities has an impact on me because it still feels like I'm experiencing something, maybe not with the highs and lows of a more in-depth storyline. I'm doing inverted commas, but do you sort of see where I'm getting at? Do you think of your Moving Cities project as that, or
if I can pick a piece of music and pick the pictures that fit it and upgrade your experience of that music, so you're almost creating the organic pictures that were in that composer's head when he was making the music, then that would be, to me, it's all about the music. Without the music, it would be, and it could be the sonic atmosphere. It's all about the sound, because when you listen to a bit of music you like, that is the experience I'm after. I'm not after a kind of a narrative per se, like a traditional verbal narrative, but more of a kind of an emotional journey akin to what music does.
Yeah.
And it's, if I can find the right assembly or running order of pictures that takes you on that experience, so it's seamless, perfect, great. That's why I always struggle with endings, because music doesn't have an ending.
Right.
That's why all my films have really bad endings, is because and if they have a decent ending or an ending, they're often really just like ending for ending's sake, because music does that. Music doesn't end. It just kind of has a symbol or a crash or a fade. And the best piece of music you've ever heard probably won't have an ending.
Right.
And it's that,
So do you always start with the music? Do you always start with a soundtrack or a composer before you actually do the shoot, or does that come in later?
Often I will have I think 1 out of 10 of the films I've had the music at the beginning. The others I've gone a process of discovery after it's been shot, because then I know what I'm looking for, because I've met the dancers, I've seen the locations, I'm like, right, I need something dark, or I need something bright, or I need something heavy,
Yeah.
and you just, it's and I like it that way, and because I think musicians work that way. I think they jam, they find stuff, they're like, yeah, I like that rhythm, I like that, that, and I don't see any reason why filmmakers can't work like musicians and composers. I don't see any reason.
Yeah, there's so much kind of separation in even if you think of education, right? Like music, you study film, or you study dance. There's not many opportunities for those worlds to collide. And then when you leave, the first thing you want to do is work with all these different people, but you haven't been given that chance to do that.
Yeah.
That's like really like you start learning the crust of that. And there needs to be more things where that hybridity is fostered.
In an education environment.
But that's what distracts me to doing dance film, is that I don't feel like I'm either or.
Yeah.
Like people ask, so you still a dancer then? And I don't know. Like I'm always thinking of both at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm always moving.
Yeah, they are the same thing. I think it's just just for our own, just for the audience's understanding of what they are. They've been categorized for the retailing of it, I suppose, or the kind of the delivery of it. But actually, all of these art forms are really part of the same thing. They're just like, one's for ears, one's for eyes, But really, like, when a film is for all of them, apart from touch, it is really for all of them.
So we're nearing the end now. So this is one of our last questions, but we see that when we first started, or when I first started making film, I was making film for single screen works. and I'm still looking to find ways to get into the installation realm and different kind of places. But looking at Moving Cities as an example, we've seen that it's hit Tape Modern. There was a WeTransfer campaign as well for Moving Cities to be screened on there, and I think that's awesome. Like, we're trying to think now of all these different parts of the web that we can reach outside of just screening on for single
Festivals,
screen,
yeah.
festival circuits or just different screens and stuff. But how do you find those opportunities? This is really just me blatantly asking. Do you outsource for that? Do you contact WeTransfer and go, look, this could be
Got
something
this
interesting?
idea.
Or did they find something through the festival circuit?
Right, well, yeah, WeTransfer is a really interesting one. For ages, I was loving the wallpaper they were using, and I was
Yeah.
obviously using the service like everyone does. Everyone uses WeTransfer, but I was like, they always have this fun art form or fun photo, and like, you know, I don't have the time in everything else to contact WeTransfer, so I made a commitment. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago to invest in someone who could kind of exercise a lot of those questions and a lot of those strategies. So if I was interested in, I don't know, a spot at one of a TFL station, but never got around to finding who the contact is to find out who to ask the question so they could point us in the right direction, I'd have to hire someone to investigate that opportunity. So I think I've ended up paying someone like, so someone worked with me for a year. Literally, their job was just to exercise those inquiries. So they, you know, and it's a gamble. Like, a lot of them were dead ends. You know, like, I've always wanted to get in BA Hi-Fi magazine because I've always felt like it was an interesting read. But it's how long does it take you to find the right contact? And when you find it, they probably moved on. So I remember, like, Emily, who works on that, she was just like ferocious. You know, I'd say, Emily, that WeTransfer, this organisation, I know they're based in Holland, but I don't know anything about them. Let's see if we can contact them and let's see if they're interested. We did get in contact and they were interested, and obviously we went straight for sponsorship. They said, I'm not sure about that, but maybe we'll do a feature on you. And one thing led to another, and we developed a relationship with them. But it took time and it took money because I had to pay Emily to do that. I mean, she is good at it, but I had to pay her
It's an
to
investment.
spend the time nurturing the relationship, because remember, there are so many amazing artists out there with so much amazing work. It just so happens that we and a handful of others have contacted them. WeTransfer is not going to go out there and find you, you know. But yeah, I mean, it was nice that they'd heard of us, but it was. I don't think without the persistence of reaching out to them, I don't think it would have. You know, not all opportunities turn out like that, but I would say, yeah, if you want to do something, you need to engender it.
Yeah. Just be persistent and don't give up, and foster, like you said, our key word today.
No, and
Foster a relationship.
right, and get someone in.
Yeah.
It's so important. Like, we were talking about funding applications with someone, and they just said, "Yeah, I get someone in." You know, I get someone who loves writing, who loves writing. Yeah, and now I'm doing a lot of workshops on how to edit yourself, how to film yourself, how to, you know, do loads of things. And sometimes at the workshops I say, guys, if you don't have the time to do, hire an editor, right? Like, we're here. Here's, you know, there's people out there who are dedicated and have put their time in and know what they're doing.
There's some stuff that you can't hire out and you just got to do it, but there's some stuff that you can hire out. And it's good to work with people. Yeah, I mean, she was brilliant, and you know, after a year she left because I couldn't afford her.
Right. Where did you find her out of interest? Did you put an
She
ad
went
on
for the
Facebook?
BBC, and I think we found her on Talent Manager, and we'd heard about her through someone else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's just a great producer, you know. Yeah, I could put her on. I think she works for Age UK now. Actually, she moved on, but you know, it's Talent Manager. It's a great place, great resource.
Right.
That's the thing, you know, when we're talking about labels and sort of having to define something, I guess producer is one of those other umbrella terms that ends up being someone that does a lot of different things too, right? So it's hard to know if you are looking for someone very specific to do a very specific task, like you just described. You know, what do you advertise for?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah. It's so difficult. It's really difficult. I mean, you know, the producer I'm working with now, Beth Cinnamon, she's incredible. She runs Tavaziva, the dance company.
Oh yeah, we
Um,
know. Yeah.
But she also does creative arts producing, and she works with me in the Hong Kong project and was instrumental in that. But such a diverse role. I mean, she was doing coordinating high level negotiations. She was doing, she was doing a lot of diplomacy work. She was doing a lot of legal work. You know, you can't afford to have someone in every one of those departments. So, and I was, the jobs I was doing on that project, I was wearing like 10, 11, 12 hats. You know, I was doing a lot of different things. So it was, really hard work. Really, really hard work. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's my experience. Everyone else, some people might not have the same experience.
But we
Totally.
love it. We love it all the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're a
we love
glutton
beating
for punishment, aren't
ourselves
we?
up, yeah.
As filmmakers. Oh, wicked. Jevan, literally, this has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and
Yeah, likewise.
and getting more than just the 10 minutes we got at Frame Rush
Yeah.
to ask a couple of it's all surface level at some of these talks, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's so nice to delve deeper and so
That was an interesting panel, though. That was good.
It was an
Oh,
interesting
yeah.
panel, yeah.
right, some things came up that
Yeah, I remember that.
that really, but that's great as well. Like I was so excited about that because nothing like that happened at any of the other talks, and I think that's what it should be. We should be able to get
Challenging questions
and have a discourse rather than just a kind of discussion about because
yeah.
otherwise what are we talking for? No, so I know this is like we've been asking this question to different people, but we're in a weird time now. So, but I was just thinking, what is anything happening next? How are things going? This world is going crazy. Screendance is everywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just tell us what's next and how people can follow your work and maybe do you have anything in the pipeline coming up?
I suppose that the Hong Kong project is kind of finishing up. And it is finished, and it's all up, and it's this huge lot. It's basically the longest photo in Hong Kong. It's a 220-meter photograph, which captures the race of the Hong Kong Ballet across Wan Chai. So the original story was that they were racing to catch the last train. So there's all these street levels, and you've got all these ballet dancers running around, and it was meant to be pretty biblical in terms of concentration of people. It was meant to be really dense and full and rich, but because of the riots, the treatment was so claustrophobic in some ways, the client asked us to pull it back, and so the end product has less people in it than it should do, which is fine and it looks great. But long story short, it's finished. The project is done and it's really successful and it's great. We're hoping to replicate that type of product in Chicago, hopefully. We've kind of, it's at very early stages, but we're hoping that the next one will be in Chicago. In terms of film, I mean, I really want to work with Bathsheba, I really, really do, and I've met them, and I think everything about them is right for the project, but it's just getting it off the ground. All these things, they take a huge amount of effort to get off the ground, and then once they're off the ground, you want them to be over. No, I don't mean that, but once they're off the ground, you want to do it and you want to get it done properly.
Of course.
There's two things that are in the pipeline. One is the shipping forecast, which is basically, are you guys aware of the shipping forecast? So shipping forecast of Radio 4 is a weather forecast delivered every day. It's quite an abstract kind of narration. It's just it's just the forecast for ships and for lighthouses and for ports.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to take the audio from that and give it to 32 different dancers, and they're all gonna basically they're going to create their own piece out of it.
That sounds amazing.
One shot, and then we're going to use that to create a kind of a an assembly of the 32 shipping areas of the British Isles in dance, interpreted into dance. Yeah. So that's in the early stages. That'll be fun.
That
awesome.
sounds really interesting. I'm very excited to see that come alive.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I'm doing right now is I'm interviewing loads of people like you are, but in a different fashion. We are creating these like short bio films, and then we're going to throw them into one remix resource. And why I call it the remix resource is that it's a website that you'll go to, and you'll be able to, using your cursor, decide who you're listening to at any one time. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. So you'll hear little snippets of different parts of the interviews as you move your mouse around the...
Yeah, people are so lazy, they don't want to go and watch a video on a website. They just want to move their cursor around. So
That's a great idea, but because it speaks volumes to the age that we're living in.
The
And, you know,
accessibility, the interactivity, yeah, man.
yeah.
the
Wicked.
short
I don't know if
term
it's I
attention
believe it's
span.
possible. We're just doing a test now, but yeah, that's the next. It's a tricky one to do though. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine there's a lot of logistics there.
Yeah. But the interviews have been going on for a few years now, because they're mostly the international projects. But yeah.
That sounds super fun.
Great.
Yeah. So they're all spin-offs though, basically.
Yeah.
Mm.
Cool.
So, how for our listeners, how can they follow your work? Where are you at? What are your acts?
At Moving Cities Project is where it's at. I did look at TikTok for a bit, but got massively intimidated by the awesome talent on TikTok. So, have got a very slimline presence on TikTok. Yeah,
We haven't ventured there yet.
We haven't touched it yet.
we're dinosaurs. I know.
See. Wicked. Jevan, thank you so much for joining us, and sending
Pleasure.
love to you and yours.
Yeah.
And let's stay connected. Definitely, let's keep having
Definitely.
these conversations.
Nice seeing you all again. Nice finally meeting
Yes,
you, Anna.
Right.
you
Always
too.
good to see you,
100%.
Amari. Lovely talking to you, James.
Yeah, and you.
This is the MDC Talks.